now all of these things are here and I'm in my journal and I'm like, okay, like this happened at this age. And I'm very open and I talk about it. I had a dance teacher when I was 10 pull me into the room and tell me, you're so big, you will never make it as a dancer.
Bro, remember when we were in Bible study and
Hey, what's going on, Brian? It's Jay with Move, and today I'm here with a great friend, Valerie. It's nice to have you on here today. How does it feel?
Feels good. A little nervous. Thank you for having me.
It's normal. It's normal. You know, I get nervous all the time. My mic is going down already. But yeah, it's nice to have you on. I'm excited. I always love having new people on, hearing new people's story and all that. But yeah, just now that I have you here, what's your story? What's your testimony?
All right. So I actually grew up Catholic.
Really?
So all the things. I've been baptized, I've done my first communion, and I've been confirmed. I was in Catholic homeschool. I used to lead youth group, like sang in the choir, like I did all of it.
Oh, went all out.
I was more into making sure that we were at church than my family was. Like when I started driving, I'd be like, well, if you're running late, like I'm just going to leave you. I was like that. Like, yeah. And I did quite a few times. And then we moved out here and I was so like, you're accustomed to your church. So you're used to the way that they sing, the way that they pray, the way that they everything. And then we moved here and I didn't find that. I didn't like any church that we had walked into. I mean, we probably went to like 8 different Catholic churches.
8?
And I was like, I don't like any of them. And I was like, so I'm not going to go. I was 18, so I thought I knew it all, you know, dad's wrong. I know it all. And then I started dating somebody and I got into the dance community here in Orlando, which to this day, like those are some of my closest friends. But at that time I was surrounded by people who didn't believe. And so it was very easy to pull away from God and just be like, oh, the universe and we're manifesting and crystals and just like all of the all of the new like the new world stuff. But I always felt like there was a pull from God regardless, because I could never like 100% commit to any of these things. So it was like, oh, like the crystals are cool, like they're cute, but like I'm not putting them outside my window to like recharge when there's a full moon. Like that didn't make any sense to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I dated my ex for 3.5 years. And that was pretty much 3.5 years that I was away from God. Because, I mean, when you're with somebody that doesn't believe, like, you know?
It's kind of just a thing.
It's just a thing.
Yeah.
And I remember so vividly. It was 2019. I was in Arizona and I was at my best friend's wedding. And her and her now husband, they were both believers. Like they found each other through church. Like they're the youth pastors of their church. Like beautiful story. And I remember sitting at that wedding and I was like, I would love this. But if things continue the way that they are right now, like I'm never going to have this. And it's like both families together praying over each other. Like everybody got along. Like it was just so beautiful to see. And I was like, I want this. But the way things are going, like I'll probably never have this. And that was in March. And in May, I ended my relationship. And literally a week later, a friend of mine texted me and she was like, hey, do you want to come to church with me? And I was like, nah, fam. I'm good. So good. Like I grew up Catholic, like going to a non-denomination church feels weird. No, I'm not going to go. But she didn't stop. And she didn't stop. And she texted me again like 2 weeks later. And she was like, come on, like, let's go. I was like, no. And then we got together for coffee on a Saturday. And she was like, why don't you just come with me tomorrow? It was in June. She's like, just come with me tomorrow. I was like, no. And then I left and I was like, you know what? I was like, I'll set my alarm. And if I wake up, I'll go. Set my alarm. I got up. I went. and I haven't turned back since.
Yeah.
It'll be 6 years in June. It was Father's Day. I could tell you the message title and everything. Like, I remember that day so vividly.
Like, really? Wow.
Mhm.
That was like a day that you just
And I
bar for
talk-
bar just haven't forgot.
And I talk to my pastor about that day all the time. And he's like, I can't believe you still remember. Which the irony to that was that my first Sunday at our church was also his first Sunday at the church from taking over in a change of leadership.
Wow.
So I've been at my church and with my pastors the entire 6 years almost that they've been there. I've been under their leadership.
Yeah, I remember you talking a little bit, I also met her at Marcus's Bible study. If you guys remember Faithful, she was also the same person I met from there. So, yeah, I remember you talking about Catholicism a little bit, when we were at, Marcus's Bible study. I'm just like, I would have lost my mind if I did that. There's no way.
Yeah, and I was in Catholic homeschool too. So add that layer to it as well. And once I finally I went to church. I went to celebration for the first time. I felt an immediate it was different because you're seeing now where it's this is a relationship with God. It's not religion. So in Catholicism, it's you go to confession, you talk to the priest, and then the priest talks to God on your behalf. And if that works for you, and that's the way that you're right with God, by all means, I'm not here to judge anybody.
Yeah.
But for me, that just it just didn't feel real, I guess, in a way. And I think that that's why it was so easy to just walk away and just be no, I'm done. This is cool. But after that first Sunday, I have not turned back since. And I remember being terrified to tell my dad, hey,
right,
actually, this is what I want to do. Or then tell my grandfather on my dad's side, no, I don't believe what you believe anymore. I still believe in God, probably more than I did before, but it's not the same anymore.
I feel like once you get out of that aspect of religion and you open your mind up to an actual relationship with God, it opens up so much things. It's wow, this is what I've been missing out on. And
that's what it felt like. Walking in the first time, it was okay, this is what that pull that's been there this entire time. That was what was missing, was just hey, come have a relationship. But I think it's so funny because people in the world think that following God, everything in your life is just so perfect and it's just so easy. And I started leading, so that was in June. Literally in September, I started leading youth. And same thing, I have not turned back since. Youth ministry has my entire heart, everything for the youth. For me, that middle to high school age, I have a soft spot for them. And I started serving, and we had this woman who was in charge of the female leaders, and to this day, mentor, best friend, big sister, when I'm freaking out, that's who I'm texting, Tina, help, what do I do? Remember that October, I decided to get baptized, which I know it's that's kind of quick, but I feel in that moment, that was to solidify what that journey was. 4 days before baptism, she was I want you to know this is where the enemy is going to attack you. You're going to get attacked.
Yeah.
And I was what are you talking about? Here I am, baby faith, just trying to figure it all out. And she was be prepared, because this is where it's going to get difficult. She was you're outwardly declaring now your relationship with God. Be prepared. It's going to get tough. And
it got tough.
It got
Yeah.
so tough.
Yeah.
My description of it is being so down and so low that you are literally peeling yourself out of bed.
Yeah.
Every morning.
I know those days.
And that was my truly worship and my journal were what got me through. Because there were days where it was no, I got up and I got out of bed literally because I had to.
Yeah.
And that was the first time where I was okay, these spiritual attacks are so real.
Yeah, it's extremely real.
I was I was not prepared for this
Yeah.
one. Nobody they tell you, but there was they're not the full extent of what it was. And that was the first time when I realized there's no perfection in Christianity, because God doesn't just give it to you easily because the enemy is still going to attack
Constantly.
all the time.
Yeah.
So that was the first time I was like, okay, I guess we keep doing this thing.
Yeah.
God, why are we doing this? I don't know.
I'm like, this
But
kind of sucks, but all right.
yeah. And then like right after that, like then it was like the pandemic. And no, it was right before the pandemic. My parents had solidified that they were going to get divorced. Like this was like in January of 2020. This was right before they had solidified like this is it, like this is going to happen. And you spend your entire life knowing that it's going to happen. I've spent my entire life waiting for it.
Yeah.
But here you are at 22 years old. This is all you've ever known. You're like, God, what are you doing?
Right.
I don't understand. And I fought for months with the idea of like, is this really God's will for us? Or are my parents just taking the easy way out? But then like in the back of my mind, I was also like, no, we've been waiting for this since like 2011, 2012.
Really?
Like,
wow. So it's like been a highly anticipated thing. Huh?
It really was. And I told my dad years later, I was like, I wish, like, I know you did it for us and for it to be normal for us and for us to be able to live life and go through high school and with our parents together. But like when you're 19 and 22, like you're used to something your entire life. And I remember it was a Wednesday. We had a young adult service that day. And I had decided that day, like, well, I don't care what the two of you do, but like I'm staying in this house and I'll stay with my sister in this house. And if you both want to leave and like whatever happens, but I'm not going anywhere.
Right.
And I just remember they did an altar call that day. And that was like the first time that I had like boldly gone up to the altar and I just sobbed.
Those are the best.
Like I was on my knees, I was sobbing, and I could tell like Defender was the song that was playing, and like somebody came and sat over me and just prayed for like 15 minutes because I was just sobbing. And I think that was the first time that I really was like, okay, God, like whatever you want this to be, like fine. And then the pandemic happened and then the world shut down.
Yeah. Oh goodness. I remember that. That was such a mess. The pandemic was such a mess. But honestly, I grew a lot. Like I think I was probably like it gave me so much time to mature because I was like sophomore year of high school. So like it gave me time. It gave me time to like.
Please take that back.
Oh gosh.
Take that back.
It was so bad. No, I can't take it back. It was so gross.
You said sophomore year of high school.
Sophomore year of high school. I was a baby.
I was literally 22, almost 23.
Yeah, I was a baby.
Wow.
Yeah, when the pandemic happened, I was a baby.
I'm old.
I wouldn't go as far as saying that. You're still pretty young, so I wouldn't go as far as saying you're old.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But no, like spiritual warfare, I think we deal with it all the time, especially just now walking in our faith. But man, when you're a baby in your faith, you're like, I don't know what's going on.
And that's also kind of like I was battling like what the like admitting what the divorce was like, is this God or is this the enemy? And you don't know. You're just trying to navigate. Like I gave my life to God 6 months ago. This divorce is like officially final. Like, what do you mean? And then the pandemic happens and then we're all stuck living together in the same house throughout the entire thing. Yeah. Where it's like me in my room, my sister in her room, my dad in the spare bedroom, and my mom in their room for like 6 months. Talk about just like people not speaking to each other for like, imagine living and being with somebody, seeing them daily and not speaking to them for like 2 weeks.
I've done it before. It's pretty awkward.
It's so awkward.
Yeah.
But my sister and I have not been closer since. Like we got closer after that.
Really?
But we really were in the same house, not speaking for like 2 or 3 weeks. Like that's bananas.
Those are hard. Those are hard times.
It was. And it's like church is now online, youth is online. Like I remember getting to a point where I was like, I don't want to watch another church service on YouTube. I can't do this anymore. I need people. I need community. So my friends and I started meeting at Blue Jacket Park on Saturday mornings.
And just doing
and just sitting and just talking. Even if I was sitting here and somebody else was sitting over there, like, because we really were just like going crazy.
Yeah, I mean, churches anywhere.
Churches anywhere.
I mean, we are technically the church. You know?
We're churches everywhere.
Churches everywhere. Where two or more are gathered, I'm there. So.
And then coming back from like post pandemic, okay, like what does church look like? What does youth look like? And that was right after that was the first time that I experienced what church hurt feels like. Because we were supposed to relaunch everything. And the day of relaunch, our youth pastor was like, hey, I'm moving, I'm leaving. And half of the youth leaders that are serving in this ministry are leaving too. And they had a meeting the week before. And I didn't go to the meeting the week before because I had a prior commitment. And he told them all then, but I found out with all the kids. And I was like, what do you mean? Why does everybody else know and I'm
kind of left out of
don't?
this.
And so then you're sitting there. You're supposed to be like, the kids are so excited because you're coming back. And it's like, well, actually, you have 22 youth leaders and only 5 are staying because everybody else is leaving. So then it starts, well, if I'm leaving, then you're leaving too, right? So you're getting all of that. And I come home and I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And my dad has always believed in God, but same thing, like grew up Catholic. So it wasn't at that point. So it was like kind of hard to talk to him about things at that point. And I remember going to church on the Sunday that we had relaunched and our pastor's wife just looking at us and being like, thank you for not just picking up and leaving the way that everybody else did. And at that point, I still didn't know whether I was staying or I was leaving because you're hearing everything.
You're just all over the place.
Everything's all over the place.
Yeah.
And so I went to brunch with my mentor, Tina, at that time. And she just sat me down and we were talking about it. And I was like, Tina, like, I don't know, like everyone's leaving. And she looked at me and she goes, are we following God or are we following man?
Yeah, that conviction. You're just like, oh.
And I told her about this recently. Actually, we went to dinner and I was like, do you remember when? And sure enough, like that just really solidified, like, okay, God, are we following man? Are we following the pastor? Or are we following what your call is? And I really sat like literally like just days. I was like, God, just tell me what to do. If it's to stay, I'll stay. Here we are. 5 years later, still there, still there. And I've been through multiple changes of leadership under our youth ministry. And when on the second go around, when the next pastor we hired, when he left, he had built a foundation on God, not a foundation on him. That when he left, we were able to keep going. It didn't feel like, oh my gosh, he left. What are we going to do?
The Israelites.
It was like, okay, he left. Here's how we keep going. And that was like that was one of the first times where I really noticed like, oh, this is not like this is built on God. This is what it's like to be built on God's foundation, not on the word of man. And here we are. We're still rocking.
You know, because if man changes, you know, and if God is solidified, he's the foundation of it. When man changes, none of it matters.
None of it. And it didn't. And we still talk about it to this day, how like we've gone through so many changes, but the youth ministry is still standing because we were built on that foundation. We're on the foundation of God. Like, and it's beautiful to see because our kids, they care so much and they want to learn and they have questions, and sometimes you'd be sitting there listening to them. Yesterday, this kid said something about like what he felt like his vision, like the vision that God has for his life is, and I just sat there in awe. I'm like, wow. You're literally in 7th grade.
It's like, bro.
And
7th grade, I wasn't even near what you were doing.
7th grade, and he's like, this is what I feel God has for me in my life, and I can't wait to get older to really pursue it. 7th grade?
7th grade, bro. Oh.
What was I doing in 7th grade?
Not
Going
that.
to the mall with my friends on the weekend.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we were doing. Whose parents driving us to the mall on Saturday? Like, that's what I was doing in 7th grade.
I was getting in trouble in school.
Oh, I was homeschooled. I didn't have that option. There was no getting in trouble in school.
I was not. I didn't have that option.
So that's what always gives me like the hope and the faith to just move forward because I see it.
Nothing's more inspirational than seeing like, you know, kids in the, you know, younger generation. That's like, I want to follow God. This is what I want to do. I'm like, bro.
I led our youth with some of our leaders like to conference
Mm.
over the summer, and I was just mind blown. Like these kids literally were like 2 days to go to a conference to worship God and learn more about Him. Heck yeah, like that's where we want to be. And I'm
Let's
like,
do it.
where was that when I was
I
in
know.
high school? But that's the thing that I always go back to is like to be who I needed when I was their age.
Mm.
I want to be for them what I needed. What didn't I have?
Yeah. That's so accurate.
Like
Like it really is. Because I mean, I look at my life of growing up, it's like it pretty rough. Like, you know, going through mental abuse, all this other stuff. And it's like I know what I want to do. I want to do the opposite. Like I want to be that example. Like, hey, this is what I follow God, and we're gonna grow in God, and we're gonna live in love, joy, and peace. You know, rather than anger and all that other stuff, because like it does nothing but hurt people.
exactly. And it's been nice to see because it's been through me. I follow God. I live my life this way, but I don't push it on
Mm-hmm.
anybody. And it's been through that I have seen like my dad started going to church with me in 2021 on Easter. He had like come like the day that I got baptized and like on like a Christmas, but like never anything like very like, oh, like I'm going to go with you every week. And then on Easter in 2021, he came and he hasn't stopped going since. My dad comes to church with me every Sunday.
Oh, that's amazing.
Well, most Sundays. If he doesn't, he's watching at home, like online. And I remember that November, we had like a late night service, and we were there and we were in worship, and we're mobile. So we're at the Orlando Museum of Arts, but we were in the Crossing Church like that Sunday, and they have their baptism like pool like there. Obviously we're mobile, like baptism Sundays planned out like 3 months in advance for
Right.
us. Like it's just what it is. And they had said that day in that service, like, hey, if anybody wants to get baptized, like it's here, like we could do it. And I was so like in the zone, and I'm in worship, and one of the pastors comes on stage and they're like, somebody would like to get baptized today. And I didn't know. I turn the corner, I look, my dad's walking out, but he wants to be he's the one person getting baptized that night. I was sobbing.
What?
I was like, what? And I was like, I'm like looking at the pastor. I'm like, did you guys know? And they're like, surprise. Like he just came up to us out of nowhere and was like, I want to do this
Wow.
right now.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And it's literally like we were in church yesterday and we were going over Matthew, and our pastor was like, at the end of the day, it's like, just be the light. And it's like, that's all I've done. I'm not perfect. I have days where I'm like, God, why? I don't understand. Actually, I'm really mad at you right now. But it's just that, like, be the light in somebody else's life. So if I can do that and bring people to Jesus, then I feel like I've done enough.
And I really love that too. I use this because I recently just started buying like more Jesus merch because I'm like, I'm tired of kind of wearing like, you know what I mean?
See?
You know, like I like wearing stuff like that because it opens doors and it opens opportunities. I remember the other day I was at Culver's and I wore my "Hey, need prayer" shirt tap on my shoulder. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And so I get up. This guy's like, "Hey, man, I really love your shirt." Mind you, I recognize this guy. I'm like, "Oh wait, I know you from somewhere," because I used to work at Planet Fitness. He used to come in Planet Fitness all the time.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I was like, "Oh, you know," I had this tugging. I'm like, "You should pray with him." I was like, "I want to get my ice cream first." So we ordered our ice cream and stuff. Came back, and you know they're about to leave, and I'm like, "All right, I got them where I want them. So let me pray with them." And we're talking a little bit, and this couple, they just got married, but they were both widowed, so they're like 60, like in their 60s.
Oh.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I've never seen if I remember seeing this guy when I worked at Planet Fitness, I've never seen this guy smile so much ever.
Oh.
And so like I'm seeing pure joy through this man, and I'm like, this is beautiful. It's like you guys are 60 years old and you guys are acting like teenagers. Like this is beautiful. This is amazing. And so we're talking a little bit about what church they go to, you know, just holding conversation. I was like, "Hey, before you guys leave, like let's pray." And so I prayed with them, and it was amazing. And the fact that God brings those opportunities is beautiful. And that's kind of like why I really love just trying to grow the community, especially growing the kingdom, you know, because there's so much more to life than just being like, oh, it is what it is or whatever. Like this is what life is. Like
My sister said that to me yesterday. One of my biggest, like, I don't know, like, I guess the biggest prayer that I've had in the last like 6 years is that some way, somehow, like, she'll start coming to church and like, and she'll come, like, if I invite her, like on an Easter, like on Christmas, like, oh, hey, it was the church's like 10-year anniversary. Like, I can get her like every once in a while. But even my pastor, like, we're close, and every time he sees her, he's like, I'm waiting to see you here every Sunday. Like, I'm waiting to see you here every Sunday. And Saturday she texted me and she was like, what time are you going to church? And I was like, oh, I'm serving. Like, I have to be there at 8. And she was like, oh, what time are the services? I was like 9 and 10:30. She's like, okay.
I think
And then she pulled up to church yesterday.
Oh.
Like, she texted me. She was like, I'm on the way. And I was like, oh.
Okay.
And yeah, and then she was like, she said, like, we were a few hours later, she was like, I think that what he said in church, like, be the light. She's like, you've always had that, just like, but like, use the light. Don't be afraid of it. Because I was talking about being nervous to do this, and she was like, but you have that light. God gave you that light. Like, use it. And I was like, excuse me? Who are you?
I don't know you.
You. And now she's got friends that are wanting to come to church with her next Sunday. And she's like, yeah, I'll be there. 10:30.
It's crazy.
I was like, okay, cool.
It's like all God.
That's all God.
That's all
That's
God.
literally the prayers just slowly being answered. But I remember when I was away from God, that's all my dad ever did. My dad just prayed.
Yeah.
And I gave my testimony on stage at my church a few years ago. And like, my dad will tell anybody. He was like, I didn't try to end the relationship that I didn't want her to be with. I didn't try to stop her from doing the thing. I wanted to move to California and like do this, like all the things, all the things you want to do in your early 20s. And my dad never said, no, don't. He never said, yes, I support it either. But all he did was pray. Every day he would pray that God would open my eyes to what I should be, I guess, doing. And that was, you know, finding God. And my dad's like, you know, when I prayed that you would find God, he's like, I didn't know we were going to be taking it this far, but like, here it is. And I see the way that like I survived like being away on a cruise contract for a year because of God. And I'd say that boldly even when I was there. Like, I always wore my little what would Jesus do bracelet, and it was always a conversation starter. And like an environment where that's not normal, like in the entertainment industry, in Europe, in Australia, like these things aren't normal.
You went to Australia? How was it out there?
It's a good time.
Really?
I've been to 31 countries, and 16 of them were on my second cruise contract.
What? Dang, I've been in America my whole life. It's kind of boring out here.
I've lived a life. I've lived a very interesting life. In 2022, I got injured, and I thought that dance was over, and I thought that I was like done with dance. I've danced my entire life. My entire life, from when I was like 7 or 8 till today. Like, I'm still dancing today. It's 20 years later, you know?
Yeah.
And this is so funny because we're in prayer and fasting right now. And like, my entire prayer this month is like, God, what do you want me to let go of? And so in this season of like prayer and fasting, he's been like, I guess, revealing old things from my past. And he's like, I need you to really like we're bringing this out now. Like, I really need you to let these things go. And so it's been interesting because it's been a slight like you're remembering the trauma that you went through as a child, but it's like bringing them out. So now that they're out, now we can let them go and put those in the past. And so that's been an interesting journey in the last few weeks, because you really do. You bury all of these things, and then suddenly God's like, hey, you said you wanted to let things go. And I wrote it in my journal. I was like, is it apps? Is it social media? Is it insecurity? Is it doubt? Is it people? Is it memories? Like, what do you want me to let go of? The first thing was dating apps. I got that loud and clear.
Yeah.
Delete it. Done. Okay, fine.
Not a problem.
I guess.
Sure.
Sure. We'll delete Hinge off my phone, delete the
Dating
account.
apps
Like,
are so messy anyway. So
listen. Listen.
that's a whole different topic right there. That is a whole different topic.
It really is.
Yeah.
But that was like that was the first. Like literally I prayed that on a Monday night. On Tuesday, God was like, let it all go. And so I texted my accountability buddies. Hey, prayer and fasting. This is what God said to let go of. It's for the next year. Why the next year? Heck if I know.
Yeah, I
but
don't
it's
know.
it's the next year.
Yeah.
And my accountability buddies have texted me 3 different times now. How are we doing? And I'm like, we're hanging in there.
We're doing the thing.
We realize that it's out of boredom. It's not out of want. It's out of boredom. Pick up a book and go read a book.
Right.
That's literally what I've done. Pick up a book and go read a book.
Yeah.
That's what it's been.
Because all you just sit there and just like, sure.
Like when
sure.
TikTok went away and everyone was freaking out, I was like,
I'm like,
good,
all right, cool.
less phone time.
Right.
But then you realize people really are just making an idol out of this app. I'm like, you were crashing out over this app.
It's not even that serious. Like those 24 hours were like, it's like the world died.
Jay, it was 14. It was 14 hours. TikTok was gone for 14
I'm
hours.
like, these people are like, bring TikTok back. They're spamming Trump's post. And I'm like, oh my, people, go
It was
outside.
14 hours. Touch some grass.
Gosh, please.
Touch some grass. But anyways,
Yeah, anyway.
back to the point.
And back to
And so in praying, like, God, reveal what do you want me to let go of? Like, you start to realize, and I've realized this, like, not all friendships, not all relationships are for every season of life. Is that a hard pill to swallow?
Yes.
Absolutely. Because you think the person that you called your ride or die 2-3 years ago is going to be there forever. Okay, maybe they're not. So that's a tough pill to swallow. But then also, suddenly all of the traumatic experiences from your childhood, from when you were 10 to when you were 15, suddenly starting to make a comeback. I didn't want this.
Yeah.
God, this was not the plan. So now all of these things are here and I'm in my journal and I'm like, okay, like this happened at this age. And I'm very open and I talk about it. I had a dance teacher when I was 10 pull me into the room and tell me, you're so big, you will never make it as a dancer. I was 10.
Wow.
10 years old.
And you take that. and
You take that.
You stick to it. Like
You stick to that.
Yeah.
But I never stopped dancing because I always loved it so much. And when you're like 11 and 12, they tell you that they have to order your costumes bigger because you're so round. And then when you're 13, they tell you, oh, we can't order cute costumes because of you. And when you're 14, they look at you, they get into a fight with your mother. They tell your mother, I'm going to pull your daughter out of the recital 2 weeks before the show in front of everyone so that I can embarrass her. I was 14.
What?
Yeah. Life is
I
wild.
need to find these people.
Life is real wild.
Yeah.
So in 2022, I got injured and I hurt my Achilles tendon. And I was like, okay, God, if dance is not meant to be the thing, then take it. If it's not meant to be, this injury is not going to get better. I could barely walk. Like, I could barely walk without my foot being in pain. But I told him, I said, if this is what it is, then take it and I'm okay with it. I don't love it, but I'm okay with it. But if it is, then I thank you today for healing me. And every day I just said, thank you for healing me. Thank you for healing me. Thank you for healing me. For like 4 months straight, I would wake up in pain, could barely put my foot on the ground. And every morning, thank you for healing my foot. Thank you for healing my foot. Thank you for healing my foot. Come like September, I woke up one day and I wasn't in pain anymore.
What?
I was like,
okay, now you cooking.
oh, okay. All right. But still, thank you for healing my foot. Thank you for healing my foot. In November, I went and I took a dance class after like being like, I don't really know where this stands. I finished that class and the choreographer was like, hey, like you did really great. Like come back and like take my classes again. Like I was like, okay. And then at the end of like November, they had posted an audition for Virgin Voyages, the cruise line. I was like, yeah, I'm going to go. Like, heck yeah, I'm going to sign up. I'm going to go. It was the day before the audition. And I was like, no, I'm not going anymore. My sister was like, what? And I was like, no, I can't go. I don't audition well. Like every time I've ever auditioned, the answer's always been no. So what's the point? I'm not going to go. And she was like, no, you're going to go. Let's go to your room. Let's pick out your outfit. I'm making sure that you get up in the morning. And I was like, God, I was like, whatever comes from this audition, like, let it be you. So, like, every dance step, the way that I pick up the choreography, every facial, whatever, I was like, let it be you. Not me in this room, but you. And so we go through the first round of auditions. Auditions are usually like 2 or 3. So we go through the first one. They send us on break. They come into the room. I get moved to the second round. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I just made it through the second round of an audition. Like, that's never happened. We go through the second round. The head of like entertainment comes up to me in like the middle of the second round, and he's like, hey, I just want to give you some feedback while we're like in this real quick. And he like gives me feedback, and then I look and I'm like, he didn't talk to anybody else. He just came up to me. Okay. So they send us off. And so then they like pull one group for like a third round, and then they pull me aside and they're like, we just want to talk to you right away. And I was like, oh, okay. All right. And he comes up to me and he's like, hey, have you ever heard of, it's on the ships, they call it the Happenings Cast. So they host and then they dance and like they entertain the parties and like all that stuff on the ship. And he was like, have you heard of it? And I was like, actually, yes, I have like a couple of friends who I know from here in Orlando in the dance community that actually are part of it on one of your ships right now. And he was like, cool. He was like, he like explained it to me. He gave me the whole rundown, and he looks at me and he goes, I would love to offer you a contract to be part of the Happenings Cast if you're interested. I was like, absolutely. Like, yes. And so it was like, okay, like, just like go and sit down and like have like a little interview with like these people. And it was super quick. Like, tell us about yourself and what do you like to do and like all this stuff. And I walked out of that room with like a verbal offer. Like, obviously, like at that point you kind of had to wait for the written one to like come in. But I walked out of that room with a verbal offer. So here's the girl who spent her entire life thinking dance was going to get her nowhere. And she just got offered a contract on a cruise. Like, if that's not God, I don't know what is.
I don't know.
And I spent an entire year, 347 days on ships with 2 weeks off in between, a 4.5-month contract, and then a 7th-month contract. And like, life-changing. I grew so much as a person, but also like, it was so hard because you're away for so long.
Yeah.
And that was like, I think that was one of the first times like truly in adult life where it was like you lean on God or you have nothing. And people ask me, how did you make it through? And I'm like, God. I'm texting my pastor at 10 in the morning, freaking out, being like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. 3-minute long audio note, like, this is everything that's happening. I don't know if I can do this anymore. And him sitting me down and being like, I can't give you the answer, but I can tell you to go to God. And he was like, you'll know if it's the enemy trying to get you out of here or if it's God trying to push you to grow.
Like, all right. Like,
okay, fine.
I was like, since you said it.
Because you said so, fine.
Whatever.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. I love that God moved like that in your life. And the fact that the enemy tried to knock you down at a young age, but like, you this isn't going to work for you because of your size. Like, oh, okay. Like,
and I did it. And I danced in
you just kept doing it.
A bathing suit on a box in Bimini. And I just got to inspire then women who are like in their 30s and their 40s and their 50s who are like, I can't wear a bathing suit. And then they're messaging me and they're like, but there you are, just like living your best life. And I remember during the pandemic reading a book, and in the book she says, if we're created in the image of God, like would you speak badly to God the way you speak to yourself about yourself? Like, you're created in God's image. So why talk badly about yourself then? You're not talking badly about God, but if you're created in his image, you're talking badly about yourself. Well, now you're talking bad about God. And that has just always, whenever like
Wow.
it gets bad, whenever I get insecure, whenever like anything, I just remember like I am created in God's image. I might not like it, but I'm created in his image.
Mhm.
And so I think that too, like, you know, you're surrounded by people all the time, and your appearance matters so much. You're the face of the ship. Like, you're all like, that was like, insecurities come like constantly, but that's the one thing that like replays in my head pretty constantly. Like, I am created in God's image.
I think that's a big thing to remember too, especially when you're dealing with like a lot of doubt, insecurities. Like me personally, of course, I still go through doubts and insecurities. You know, God gets me through them, thankfully.
I was feeling insecure like 3 days ago.
Yeah,
Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, it's like that was me
absolutely.
just yesterday, you know? But when you remember like you're made in God's image and that, you know, he knows your worth and you're worth so much more than what you're trying to put onto yourself. It's like, why am I sitting here tripping? Like, I don't get it. It's like, to him, I'm worth so much.
And that like you just said it, like it's his worth that matters. It's not what the world thinks. It's what God thinks.
I seen a thing where it said, why are you guys caring so much about a world that nailed your savior to a cross?
Oof,
And I was like,
you're right.
yeah, literally. Why am I trying to get so much acceptance from the world, you know, when all that matters is just from God?
Yeah, and I learned that lesson, and it slapped me in the face pretty hard last year. 2024 was like up there on probably one of the worst years of my life. Like, everyone's always like, oh,
2024 has been hard. We talked about that a little
like,
bit.
2020 with COVID and like, you know, all this. And I was like, actually, like, no, it was 2024 for me, because I came back from contract at the end of February with the thought that I'd asked for 2 months off and like my next offer would be coming right after that. Like, that was just the thought. That's kind of how the conversations went. That's how, like, when you're a performer, you get like a mid-contract review and you get like an end of contract review. And that was the impression that I was kind of left with. And like, I think I'd been home for like 2 weeks, and a bunch of my friends from my cast were like, I just got my next offer. I just got my next offer. I just got my next offer. And I was like, I haven't heard anything yet.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, like, don't worry. Like, it's not this batch. Like, it'll be the next batch. And in the midst of all of that, my dog became partially paralyzed. And I was literally driving her to physical therapy all the way into land, like 3 times a week, because, and I live in Windermere, so like the land's like an hour and 15 minutes away from my house.
Yeah.
I was driving over there 3 times a week because I was like, no, like, this is my dog. Like, this is my child. I'm going to do whatever I can, like, to do right by her. And then in the midst of all of that, my entire house and entire family is being attacked spiritually.
Oh.
The entire house, every single person. My dad remarried, and his wife had 3 daughters. So it's the 3 of them. It's the 4 of them and then the 3 of us. Every single person in my house, including the dogs, had something was happening to every single person in the house.
Goodness.
So it's like, my sister was sick after sick after sick after sick. We had like an issue with like one of my twin stepsisters, and then the other one was always sick, and then everyone was having bad dreams, and my dog had gotten injured and suddenly couldn't walk. The other dog was limping and like had a bad knee. My dad's business was struggling in like a certain type of way, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, is this what I came home for? Is this what I came home to? God, this is what you, like, I had been looking forward to coming home now for like 2 months, because 7 months away is a long time.
That's a very long time.
2 weeks after getting home, everything fell apart. And I was like, God, this is what you brought me home for? This is what you brought me home to? And I literally would take anointing oil and I would go over every single door and every single window in my house. And I was like, I don't care who of these girls believes and who doesn't believe. And I anointed every door and every window every day. And I would pray around every corner of my house, because I was like, something is seriously trying to attack us right now. And then I thought, is it me? I'm the one who left and came back. Did I bring this back?
Yeah. Holy.
And I really wrestled with God last year. I was angry. And that was the first time ever where even my dad would look at me and be like, sometimes I think that you don't have faith in God anymore. And I looked at him and I said, have you seen my circumstances right now? It's really hard. It is so hard. Like I could list the things that were happening. And I'm like, that was like, they call it like having ugly trust in God, or like, that was like, I'm trusting you. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know why you're doing it. Like, you've literally put me through the absolute ringer. Like, why? And in August, I decided to fast social media because my dog passed away. I put my dog down in July. The week of my birthday, I put my dog down. And then at the end of July, I had sent an email and I was to casting and I was like, hey, like, just wondering, is anything coming? Like, should I expect anything? Like, I really enjoyed my time. Like, and I got like a flat out, like, no, like, we don't have anything to offer you. The next day, contracts went out to another batch of people. So it was like, the options were there. You just didn't want to give it to me. But if you knew in March that you weren't going to give me anything, you should have just told me right away so that I could have moved on with my life.
Right.
Because here I am holding on to this hope that like, I'm going to go again. And you knew that the answer was no the entire time.
You just left me hanging.
You were just dangling this thing in front of me.
Gosh.
And so in August, I decided to fast social media completely because I was now upset and getting triggered over the fact that like all of my friends were going out there. And I remember talking to my therapist and I was like, Jessica, I know, like, is it bad to feel like I'm walking this line where like I'm happy for everybody else? I am. Just because they're winning doesn't mean that I'm not going to. But I'm sad that I'm not there with them. And she was like, no, you can be both at the same time. Like, my therapist is incredible. If I can say anything, it's like, have your service providers be people of faith. My hairstylist, my therapist, my chiropractor, and my personal trainer, they're all women of faith.
That's amazing.
And it makes such a difference because you really need people to speak life into you
Absolutely.
at all times.
Oh, definitely.
And so she said, no. She said, Val, like, you can have both. You can be happy for somebody else, but you can be conscious of the fact that you're grieving what was. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. I am grieving the life I thought that I was going to continue to have. So I fasted social media. And in that time, I was like, you're not scrolling on TikTok. You're not scrolling on Instagram. Like, you're not on Twitter. Like, what are you doing? You're reading your Bible all the time. You are. You're listening to worship music all the time.
Yep.
And in that time, literally, I would roll over. And if I heard God speak, I'd like roll over and I'd like write a note on my phone. And I can remember clear as day, I had been praying and I was like, God, just write the answers down on a piece of paper at this point. Like, I don't know what, like, I don't know. I need something. I need to see it. I need it to feel tangible at this point because right now I feel so lost. And God said, I need you to trust me the way a child trusts their father. I need you to have childlike faith. And God, I could hear God clear as day as I'm getting emotional. And God said, I need you to let me hold your hand and walk you through this, but I need you to let me do it. Not you. I need you to let me do it. And I remember like, and I have it and it's in a note in my phone and it's like, have childlike faith, like run to God the way a child runs to their parent. Because when you're a child and you're lost and you don't know what to do, who are you running to?
Your parents.
You're running to your parents.
Yep.
And God was telling me, why are you not running to me this way? And it's like 1 a.m. and I'm like in the notes on my phone, literally sobbing. I'm like, okay, take my hand, whatever this looks like, take my hand. Literally from that moment on, everything changed. And
Right.
that was the first time in 2024 where I felt like, okay, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a moment like that. Maybe not that extreme, but I remember last year, we talked about it a little bit, but you guys don't know. But we talked about, how I, basically I was for 7 months, I didn't have a job. And I was going through a financial, rut. Well, I guess everybody does know that. I talk about that a lot. But I remember there was one time I was outside of my car and I was so down. Like I was beat, withered. Like I was basically cooked is what I would like to put it. I was in my car and I was just sitting there and I'm listening to worship music and I just like turn it off. I was just like, all right, I can't listen to this right now. And I just start talking to God. I'm like, God, what do you want me to do? I can't. I'm applying to everything. Nothing is coming through. I go to interviews, dead end. They make it seem like I have the job and then I don't get anything. It's like, what is it? What do you want me to do? What is it that you're trying to get me to do? Like, I'm not just saying that in this voice. I'm screaming. Like, I am screaming. I'm punching my steering wheel. I'm like, I don't know what you want me to do. I'm lost. I can't figure this out. And I feel like the reason why I couldn't is because I kept praying to him and trying to give it to him, and then I'll take it back. I'm like, I can do this. Like, all right, well, let me apply to all these jobs because this is what I want to do. Instead of going to him and be like, all right, what do you want me to do? And the moment where I actually sat down and I had so many moments, I'm like, God, what do you want me to do? And the time I got to the point where I'm like, all right, I cannot do this anymore. I am just so burnt out. I just cannot. And I remember just there, and I remember, Gary, and he just told me to text him and ask him about a job. I'm like, but he always recommends Taco Bell or McDonald's. I've already applied to those places. They haven't even hired me. And he's like, well, just ask him about audio and visual. And I'm like, bro, I don't know nothing about that. Like, I'm lost. I don't know. But I did anyway. And the moment I did, he was just like, oh yeah, I got you. Let me hook you up. And like literally that week, I got the job. And I'm like, you meaning to tell me for 7 months, this is all I had to do? I'm like, you kidding? I'm like,
letting go of control.
Letting go. And it literally was all about just trusting God and surrendering to him. And the moment I did it, it was like, bro, like I wasted 7 months.
I feel that because I came home to no job.
Mm-hmm.
My savings account got emptied because I put it all towards the dog, and I don't regret it for a second because I know anybody else would have just been like, my dog can't walk.
Oh, well.
Just put her down. Like, that's it. Like, no, I fought. And I remember looking at my dad one day and I was like, I'm so sorry for being your 26-year-old burden. And he was like, you're not. Like, get those ideas out of your head. Like, I've never said that to you. Like, where is this coming from? And I was like, no, like, think about it. Like, I've been home since the end of February and like, I'm not doing anything. And he goes, had you been doing something, you wouldn't have been taking care of your dog then. Then what? And he was like, had you been doing something, like, who would have been here for the family during this time? And I was like, dang.
It's like God does do things for a reason.
God. And it wasn't until, so I had the fast in August, and then towards the end of the fast, my old supervisor from the hotel that I used to work at texted me, and she was like, hey, there are some vacancies that are getting ready to open up for the supervisor position. Like, people are getting promoted, like, you should apply. And I just texted her laughing. I was like, bro, I was like, they only hire internally for positions like that. And it makes sense. Like, you're going to hire internally for a supervisor. Like, and she was like, yeah, but you have experience. You used to work here. Like, in my eyes, you are internal. I was like, fine, whatever. I was like, fine. When the application opens up, like, text me and I'll apply. And so I applied, and the second that I applied and my application went through, she literally told them, she was like, this is who you want to hire. Like, this is your next supervisor. And I was like, thanks for being my in-person reference.
Right.
And I was out of town. I was in New York working with my dad for his business, and they called me and they were like, hey, we would like to interview you. And I was like, hey, like, I'm out of town for 2 weeks. I absolutely understand if you interview and find somebody beforehand, like, that's okay. And the manager was like, no, like, when do you get back? Would love to sit down and meet you. And I was like, okay, like, I get back this day, whenever you want to interview. And she was like, oh, you get home Friday, can you come in Saturday? It's like, I guess, yeah. Absolutely, sure. And so I interviewed Saturday, and then they called me back on Monday, and on Monday they were like, can you come in for a second? And I was like, yeah, when? They were like, tomorrow. I was like, oh, we're moving quick. Okay. So I went in for the second one. And then like a week later, they called me and they offered me the job. And that was God, because I was like, God, if it's going to work out, like, even if I'm out of town, like, it'll all work out. And I've been there for 3 months now, and
Yeah.
it's so crazy. But I was driving to work. It was a Wednesday morning in December, and I was driving to work. It's like 5:30 in the morning, and I'm like listening to worship music because I tried to start my mornings that way. I'm fasting secular music right now until Sunday. But even on the regular, like I try to start my day with worship music.
Yeah.
And I'm driving to work and I'm listening, and it's What a God by SE Worship.
Oh my gosh, that song goes so crazy.
And we're in the bridge, and I always hear from God usually the best in my car because I spend so much time in my car. Like
Absolutely.
I'm driving all the time. Like everyone's like, I have a prayer closet. I'm like, it's my car.
Yeah.
That's it for me. Like it's my car. And I'm driving and I'm like singing, and it gets to the part where it's like the bridge, and it's like, if the highest place I've reached is at your feet, then I've done it all.
Oh, I get chills.
And
Oof.
I can hear God start to say, like, I need you to understand that I took it away because I needed you to trust in me and me alone. And I was like, huh? It's 5:30 in the morning. What are you doing? Like, I gotta go to work.
You up?
Like, I'm driving to work. Like, I gotta walk in and like be a person at 6. Like, what are you doing? And I could hear so clearly God say, like, you were depending on everything else so much that I needed to take it all away so that you would learn to just depend on me. And so it was like, do I love the fact that I lost my dog? No. Do I love the fact that what I thought was my dream job was taken away from me? No. Do I love the fact that I don't really have a relationship with my mother? No. I don't love the fact of all of these things. I don't. But it's the fact that God said I needed to take it away so that you could depend on me and only me. And now I'm at the point in my life where I'm like, if it's not from God, then I don't want it.
Yeah.
And I will. It's been a month since that, and I am now so bold and so quick to say, I don't care who it is to. If it's not from God, then I don't want it. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's the next cruise contract, if it's $1 million. Like, if it's not from God and I don't know that it's from him, then I don't want it.
Nope. I'm good.
I'm good. I'm okay. And I think that God took it all away to get me to that point. Was it easy? No. But this goes back to 2019, Val. Christianity is not easy, and following God does not make it life perfect by any means. But it is truly finding the joy in the chaos and finding the joy in the valley. Because last year I had to find joy or I was nothing. And my friends know that. And I'm so grateful for the group of people in my tribe that I have, because they listened and put up with so much of me last year, to the point where I literally was like, I'm sorry that I feel like I'm talking about this again. I literally was talking to a guy last year, and he like ghosted me and then appeared back a few months later, and he was like, you were just so negative and in such a bad place that it was not healthy for either of us. And I was like, dang. I'm like,
all right, my fault.
Why are you calling me out like this? But I
Yeah.
needed it.
Yeah.
Like, I needed to be called out. And so I think to like kind of wrap it all up, it's like, that's why your community and your accountability people and the people that you surround yourself with are so important. Because if you're full of yes men, you're going to fail. If my dad doesn't look at me and tell me that I'm messing up,
you're just
I'm
gonna keep doing
going to
it.
fail.
Yeah, you're just gonna keep doing what you think is right.
Right. If my friends aren't calling me out and texting me to be like, hey, are you doing the thing we said we weren't going to do? You're going to fail. And so that's why, like you can't do life alone.
No, definitely not. I mean, it's nice to have those people in your circle that hold you accountable and be like, hey, I don't think you should be doing that. I mean, that's like me and my guys. It's like, hey, bro, I'm gonna be honest. I don't think that's smart. I mean, you do what you do, but like, I don't really agree with that. But I still love you regardless.
I love you anyways,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
was that the smartest thing?
Yeah. And you'd be like, no, not really. You know, like me talking to somebody, friends like, hey, bro, I don't think you should do that. But I'm like, nah, bro, I analyze it. Like, I'm good. And I'm like, dang, bro. This actually happened with me and Jeremiah. I was like, man, why'd you make me like this? Why'd you let me do this? He's like, I tried to tell you. I was like,
No.
He was like, yeah, you did. And I was like, all right, I'll let it go. I'm not gonna sit here in this because you did try to hold me accountable, and I said, you know what, I appreciate it, but I got it, and I didn't have it, and then I'm like, oh, dude, this kind of hurts, you know?
Yeah.
I've been there. No, but kind of going back because it's been on my mind. So I remember you was talking about like the crystals and stuff. So I kind of
my
go back. I
gosh.
go back to now. I was in a different boat, and I haven't talked about this on the pod yet, but. I actually go back to before I was saved. I actually used to follow a whole different religion. I used to follow pagan gods, basically.
Oh, okay.
And so I used to, sleep paralysis, right?
Mhm.
I used to have that every night, ever since I started following
Ooh.
that. My first one that I had was I remember seeing this man outside my window. Mind you, like if you ever seen like African tribes, how they like dress and stuff, it's literally how he looked. And I remember looking behind me, and like it was a bloody hand, like dripping down the wall.
Oh.
And mind you, I'm looking out the window. I'm like freaked out because I'm like, this guy is just staring at me. No emotion, no nothing. And I'm like, bro. And ever since then, it just sleep paralysis every single night. And I remember towards the time I started getting into my faith, and I used to have weird dreams all the time. Like sleep paralysis, seeing figures, hearing whispers in my ears, shadows in my room, like in my peripheral. Like I used to see them like all the time in my corner eye.
Oh,
like
no.
there was something always following me. Like, and it's not a good presence. Like,
oh, no.
and I remember, when I actually decided to start following God, and of course I was still a baby in my faith. I didn't understand anything. And I was still trying to like follow the religion, but follow God at the same time. Cause God is, they say God is still in a religion, but I think it's different. I don't
So it's
think,
relational.
yeah, and, I'm still trying to, pray to God and stuff, but it was only until like when things got hard, I wasn't really relying on him all the time. And I remember, oh dang, I lost my train of thought. But I remember there was towards when I got saved, my sleep paralysis got so aggressive to the point where I felt like I was being suffocated.
Ooh.
So I'd wake up gasping for air, scared to go back to sleep because I'm like, I don't want to be choked to death. I'm like, I've so many times. I mean, that happened for weeks on end. And then when I actually stopped worshiping those pagan gods and I started just like, I can't do this anymore. And I started following God, and that's when it kind of just like stopped. And, I had a moment in the altar, just kind of, it was definitely a Holy Ghost moment for sure. I was going to a Pentecostal church. You best believe it's energetic. And I remember at the altar, after altar call, I just was like screaming and banging on the altar, and like, not who I am. Like, I am a very sweet person. So for me to be sitting there at the altar on my knees, banging and screaming out of anger, and I don't know why I was angry. I just felt this rage. And then just stopped. And I remember recently, a few months ago, I remember having another one, and I got really scared because I'm like, this can't be good, and I haven't had one in so long. And I remember having another sleep paralysis, and I'm like, I'm fearing. I'm like, I can't move, I can't breathe. I'm like, I don't want to do this. Why is this happening again? And oh my gosh, I remember waking up, getting out of that for a second. And I fell back asleep, but I was going back into sleep paralysis. So I got scared again.
Oh, gosh.
And so I remember, oh my gosh, I remember this, that when I closed my eyes, I don't know, because I've never seen Jesus. I've never seen him. But when I tell you, I seen him, and he said, do not fear my son. And I was like, I went to go hug him, and I woke up. I was like, no.
Oh,
It's
that's
like,
crazy.
I was like, no. Where'd you go? Come back. But I just kept hearing him say that, like, don't fear. I got you. It's okay. And I was like, all right. So I went to sleep with like Bible verses, like on YouTube. So I'm like 10 hours of just, I'm like, all right, we're going to go to sleep in the spirit tonight. Cause what? And I just remember that. Like, I would never forget that. I didn't even have to write that down. Like, that is
It's
engraved.
going to be there forever.
That's forever. It's like, I seen him. Like, I seen him. He spoke to me one-on-one.
Insane. That's crazy. I've only had sleep paralysis once, and it was last year in the middle of all of that.
Yeah.
And I felt I don't know what was happening, but I felt the figure like look at me and like tell me like to breathe. And then it like I felt the gust of wind in my face, and then I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, is this what sleep paralysis is like? Because I was like, God, I rebuke it. Whatever it is, I don't want it. Like, I didn't like it. So I can't imagine like all the time, because it has been one time. It was one time last year, but feeling like the breath in my face.
Mhm.
And I remember waking up the next morning and my sister was like, that sounds like sleep paralysis.
Mhm.
And I was like, I don't want it.
You know, I used to always see the memes on Facebook of like, oh, it's my sleep paralysis demons and blah blah. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Demons aren't fun.
No, they're
That's not. No.
And then I started witnessing it firsthand. I'm like, this is terrifying. And especially when you're coming across it all the time, just like, I was always told to be okay with it. Like just vibe with them. They're okay. They're on your side. No, they were
they're
not.
not.
No, they were not. They hated me. They did not like me. You know how many times I literally had sleep paralysis and I'm like telling myself while I'm having it, like, it's okay. But I can't move. There's a figure standing right in front of me. Can't see anything. I'm hearing whispers all in my ear. I'm like, why am I supposed to be cool with this? This does not, no, definitely not. And when I had that moment just encountering God, I'm like,
I'm cool with this.
I'm like,
I could do
this is
again.
cool. I'm like, can we like hang out in dreams all the time? Like,
I remember a youth pastor, one of the youth pastors that I was led by for a little while, say that he remembers like, he and I don't remember his wife now, but I don't remember if they were dating or if they were fiancés at that point. But like she was like living in her apartment and like he was living in his, and he went to like leave her one night and he just like felt worried and like it wasn't safe, and he just prayed and prayed and prayed, and like when he came like opened his eyes, like he could see like the angel around her, like with a staff, like showing him like, no, like she's going to be okay. I'm going to protect her. And I just think that that's so crazy, the way that God does that.
Yeah.
Also, angels, they be looking kind of scary too. They're like intimidating.
Yeah,
like if you really get into what they look like.
I'm just like, this is terrifying.
It is.
But aren't they meant to like scare like the demons?
Yeah,
aren't they?
exactly.
They're meant to scare
They're meant
the
to
demons.
protect us.
And I'm like, all right, you kind of freaky, but I know you on my side, so like we good. But dang, bro, you looking kind of scary. I don't like this.
Yeah, that's also like I remember doing like a baptism of the Holy Spirit one time, and just that we did it together, like a bunch of us, and just watching how the Holy Spirit affected everybody so differently. And so we had somebody who, like you said, like was screaming and just like crying and just like letting it out, and then somebody like was like laughing, and it was just like like a joyous laugh. Like I remember from what I remember from mine, like I sobbed, like I was just shaking and crying uncontrollably. And so that's when like the pastor's wife was like, God's telling me to remind you that you are enough, and like it's not your fault. And so that's why I got the word enough tattooed on my wrist, so I can look at it and remember. I've got enough on this side and faithful on this side.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
I look back at moments like that and I'm just very appreciative of God, and I'm glad that, you know, he's chosen me since the day I was born. And I'm just glad that I came to my senses and be like, I can't do this alone, and I need God to do this. And through it all, he's been there. Even the times that I didn't follow him, he was still there. It's like, dang, bro. Like I always had that intuition, gut feeling, you know, when things weren't right. I'm like, I probably shouldn't do this. Like, all right, well, I'm not. And then something happened. I'm like, but I'm thinking it's just like, it's just my senses. So I'm like, all right, so my intuition saved me there. But the whole time it was really God.
Yeah, I always say it like when people are like, oh, like, why do you follow God? Or like, why is this a thing? And I'm always like, because I know what my life was like before, and I see what it's like now. And one of my friends, like, and I always think about it, like she always says, she's like, I could spend my entire life following God, and then I die and realize that maybe I did it for nothing. But at least I know that I was following something good and true, and that at the end of the day, like, whether it's true or not, I'll get to be with God in heaven, or I won't, but at least I was a good person. Or I spend my life not, and then the other outcome is the option.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, you're right. Like, I'll take this over what the other option could be any day.
Think about church hurt too. Like that's also a real thing. And I understand why people are like, I just don't go to church because people and all that. I'm like, bro, been there. Like, I didn't go to church for a while because I'm like, all right, well, all they do is ask for money. All they do is sit here and condemn. And
Dad
I'm
was like that.
I was like, I don't want to be here. Like, why would I want to go to church if this is all it's about? Like, this shouldn't be about church. This shouldn't be about the church and giving money and about doing all this. It should be about God, right? So I just stopped going. And then when I started going back, and then first church I started going to was like that, and I started seeing it, and I'm like, I'm like,
Here we go again.
I'm like, here we go again. Then I left, started going to the church I go to now, and I'm like, yeah, this is what it's supposed to be like. It's more fellowship. It's more community. It's more loving. It's more joyful. Yeah, they have, you can give money if you want, but it's not like they pass the bucket around and you just like, oh, I got to do this.
My stepmom was telling me that there was a church that she went to in Colombia. And so in Colombia, card readers are portable.
Mhm.
Like, even if you go to like a store in the mall or like card readers in Colombia are pretty, like, they're pretty portable. And she said that she was at a church one time where they were passing the credit card reader like
What?
around, like not the bucket, the card reader was being passed down the aisle. And so my dad was like that with churches too, because he saw so much of that growing up. And like, he'll tell you like some of the richest people in Colombia are pastors and like stuff like that. And so he was always very turned off by it until he started coming to my church, and he was like, no, like they're not pushing it on you. You do if you want to, and you feel like that's the pull and the call that God's giving you. And we should tithe, and it's in the Bible, but like, it's not like, give me your 10% right now, or like, don't come back. Like, it's not like that.
I remember going to a little convention for my old church. They're whatever they're called, their little group or whatever. I remember we went to a convention. It was Olney, Virginia. So by the way, I can't turn around and go back home if I wanted to.
That's where I was raised.
Really?
In Virginia.
Yeah, I think we were in someplace. But I remember being out there, and one of the pastors was like, if you ain't giving $50 and you broke. And I'm like, what? I was like, boy, what are you talking about? I'm like, you're what? And he was like, and I'm seeing people like actually going up there and be like, all right, I'm giving you 20, I'm giving you 50, I'm giving you 100. I'm like, what? You guys are so like, I hate to say it, but brainwashed. It's like you guys are like, oh, you guys are hearing this for all your life, and it sucks because they're like, oh, well, if I do this, then I'll get into heaven. Like I have to do this to get into heaven. That's what they like try to push onto people, and I'm like, that's not true. Tithing is definitely something out of your heart. Like if you feel desire to or be led to do it, then do it. Sure. I don't ever really feel led to give money to the church. It's not really. I like just giving money to people. It's like people who are in need. It's like, if you're struggling, I want to give money to you. But like when he said that, I was like, bro, and I can't go home.
You're in Virginia.
I'm in Virginia.
You're 12 hours away from home.
I'm far. Okay. I can't just get in the car and be like, all right, I'm going home, grab me some food on the way back. Like I'm gonna have to fly back or something.
We're not in Tampa. We're not around the corner.
We're far. And when he said that, I was just kind of like, yeah, I'm done.
That's crazy.
I'm done with this. And I think that was around the time, at least close to where I started to decide, like, I think I'm done with this. I want to go to a different church. I can't do this anymore. This is ridiculous. I'm starting to see this is all about money. It's not even about people being saved. It's not about their walk with God. It's about their image, and it's about money.
Yeah, and there is a lot of that, and it's really sad because that's what gives Christianity a bad name.
Mhm.
It's things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually not God. It's the people.
It's the people.
We did my church did a few years ago. We did a whole series on all of that, and we touched on like church hurt and mental health and like all those topics that are like very taboo and like you don't want to talk about. And what somebody who had experienced church hurt like came that day of the church hurt one, and she just sobbed, and she was like, it's so nice to see that like it's not like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that there's a lot of things that are taboo in the church that we should talk about more often.
Definitely.
I feel like there's a lot
There's
that
so
like
much.
we should touch on. And so that's why one side of me, when like this whole like, oh, like TikTok is being banned kind of thing, I was kind of like, but there's so many people that speak about so many things that are actually so important on there.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is good. It's not just bad on there. Like there is good on there. I do follow some like Christian content creators that are like really speaking truth and really speaking word, or like that I can relate to as well. Like, like being in your early 20s and not following God and having sex before marriage, and just like, what does all of that look like moving forward and following God? And like, you don't talk about those things. We don't talk about those things.
Very uncomfortable. Nobody wants to talk about it.
Nobody really talks about like singleness and like what that's like, or like the feeling of like you're hitting your late 20s and you're kind of starting to feel like, oh my gosh, like what is going on? Like, is there something wrong? Like you don't really talk about those things. So that's been one thing. Like I've always been like, I feel like we should talk about these things more, because there are so many people who are young in their 20s that have found God later that are like, okay, so what does this mean for me now? And I know because I was that person.
Yeah. Yeah.
I lost my virginity when I was 18. Like,
Oh,
I found God when I was 22. Like,
yeah.
what does that look like for me later? You know,
Mhm.
he's being abstinent for the last 6 years. That's what that means.
Yeah.
But like, what does that look like in the biblical context of things then? Or like moving into a relationship with somebody, or like, I'm like, we should not be afraid to talk about these things.
Yeah, and I try my best to push that content out, because it's like, if it's one thing I do here is I just want to open up vulnerability. It's like, let's come on here and just be open and talk about things that, you know, that isn't talked about in the church, or that a lot of people in the church don't talk about. You know, like one of the videos I released with good friend Eddie, shout out to you, where we talked about breaking generational curses. Not a lot of people talk about that in the church. Not at all. It's such an uncomfortable topic. It's a very big topic to be vulnerable on, because you have to. It's like, listen, this is what I suffer through, and this is what my family generation suffers through. You know, and it's like, how can we break that cycle? And I like to be able to open those topics, even talking about lust, like just talking about things of that matter, because yes, the church talks about, you know, sexual immorality, sure, but nobody actually has a one-on-one like, hey, like, this is what I suffer from, and this is what it looks like, and this is how you can walk through it with God. Nobody talks about that a lot. And
It really wasn't until finding people like that on TikTok that I was like, oh, like, I'm not crazy. Like, I'm not and you know that you're not, but nobody talks about
Yeah.
it. So you just assume like, I guess I'm the only one.
only
But
one.
it's really like, no, this is actually something that a lot of people struggle with. Like, lust is such a big thing.
Absolutely.
That's huge.
Mhm.
Or like, what does it feel like, you know, to lose your virginity and then find God later? And then like, what does that look like?
Yeah.
It's a big reminder that like, we are not like the things that happened to us, and we're not the things of our past, because we have been redeemed by those things, and you just kind of got to pick up your cross and keep
going. I agree 100%, because you said 18 is for me way earlier. So like, I go back, I'm like, dang, like I started my teenage years off the wrong note. Like, we did not do good, chat. We did not do good. We did not do good. So like,
Chat.
so when I got saved, I'm like, dang, like 13 years old. Like, I'm like, I got saved at I got 18. Like, I'm 18. I'm like getting saved. I'm like, it's like I go back and I think about it, and I don't have that grudge, you know, about it anymore. But when I first got saved, I was like, I want to go back and I wish I could just change it all. I hate the fact that I even did it.
But you wouldn't go to God the way that you do now if you didn't go through the things that you did.
And that's why I began to, yes, I neglected it when I first got saved. But when I got, you know, more into my faith, I'm like, all right, you know, I'm thankful, because now I have something to go to God about a lot and to thank him for. And also I can help guide other people like, hey, it's not what you think, bro. I promise you it's not.
I remember like when I first started leading, like you get your kids that are like 16, 17, like they're getting ready to go to college, and what's college life going to look like? And I'm looking at them and I'm like, drinking, not that great. Smoking, not that fun. Boys, a waste of time. Like, figure yourself out first and then move into all of these things. But I've never been afraid to talk about my past, where like some people are like, oh, the things that I did back then don't exist. Like for me, I'm so just like
open.
You have to be an open book. I mean, you don't have to, but with the kids specifically, like it's so much better to tell them like, this is what I did. So don't.
I mean, you also,
this is what happened to me. This is how I felt. I don't want you to feel
don't do it
that way. Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Boys are icky. Wait until you're older.
Yeah. And I think, you know, I use that a lot from my past. Like I always like to think the day I decide to have kids and whatever, married, whatever. And I want to be able to lead my kids away from that the best way I can possibly do. It's like, hey man, girls, it ain't what you think. Bro. I promise you, it ain't what you think. It's not all that. But the
boys are the worst.
But the person that'll get you through it all, and that'll help you, and that will stick through you, and of course you got God, you know, like he's there. But like the moment that you have the desire to be with somebody, make sure it's somebody that's not going to lead you away from God. Because
Because I wish somebody would have told me that when I was 18.
Absolutely. I had no idea.
And I tell my dad sometimes, I'm like part of me wishes today, like, oh, like you would have just said something. And he's like, the moment that I said something, like I would have pushed you closer to and not away. Like you have to remember that. And so now I tell them, I'm like, at this big age, if something doesn't look or feel right, like just tell me. Don't let me waste X amount of years on, you know, like maybe when I was younger, I didn't feel that way. But like now I'm like, please. If the discernment is off, please let me know.
Please, because it's not worth it. I promise you, it's not.
It's really not.
You gain nothing. You literally gain nothing. It's literally damaging. It's self-inflicting. That's all you're doing. You're hurting yourself. Dang, I actually just thinking about it now. It's like, dang, that's crazy. That's crazy. When I tell people the age I did, and they're like, "What?" I'm like, I was lost, man.
Yeah, but then you also said that you were a sophomore, like when COVID happened, and so I think about like kids, this future generation from like your generation and on just wants to grow up so fast. And because they have everything on social media at their fingertips, they just are. Kids are growing up so much faster than when I was younger. They just are. Like a 15-year-old today does not look the way that a 15-year-old did when I was 15.
No.
I was 15, 12 years ago. Like it is like this push for, oh, like you're so mature for your age. I heard that my entire life. Oh, you're so mature for your age. Oh, you look so much older than like what you really are. Like, but it doesn't mean that that's
the case.
Okay, or like that's the case. And I think like my prayer for the next generation is that we just like they just slow down, like the rush to want to be grown. Because let me tell you, I'm grown and I wish that I wasn't. I have days where I'm like, can we just go back?
I remember being a kid.
10 years?
No stress, no bills, no gas, like just McDonald's Happy Meals and playing at the park. It's like, don't rush it, man.
Don't rush it.
It's not worth the hype. Yeah, it's, of course, maybe in the world you get more freedom, but like even then, it's nothing. It's like being a kid is where it's at, honestly. Like if I can go back 15, 16 years old, I wish I just read a book or something. I wish I'd done something more productive.
See, what did I say? Read a book.
Read a book.
Fast in social media. Read a book.
Read a book.
Pick your Bible up.
Pick your Bible up, please.
It's got great stories in there. Let me tell you.
It does. It's a big...
The Old Testament drama.
Ooh. Old Testament's a book. Like honestly, me and Jeremiah talk about it all the time. We're like, Old Testament's kind of funny. Like
it's kind of it's something.
It's something. I'm reading 1 Samuel right now, and I'm like,
I remember.
Like, why is the Philistines this slow? Like, why? What is wrong with you guys?
Yeah, and then it's like, dang, God was quick to judge and just be like,
he's
done.
like, I'm not playing. I'm sticking to it.
And then Jesus comes along, and it's like, no, we don't have to be as strict about this.
I'm like, what happened? I'm like, all right,
grace,
definitely
grace,
definitely grace. Because a lot of people, man, that they paid the price in the Old Testament for sure.
They really did. I said that the other day. I was like, in the Old Testament, like God would literally look at his leaders and be like, okay, go take out that entire thing. Take it all out.
Take the entire city.
The entire city.
Wipe
Gone.
it.
Wipe it.
Like
gone. Done.
Out of there.
Burn it down. Everybody. Everything.
It's like I'm thinking, all right, God anoints a king. He murders thousands of people. And I'm like, God told you to do that? Like, really? I'm like, yo, wildin'. Like, this is crazy. But like, then you look at the New Testament, it's all love, all grace, all mercy.
Yeah, because I feel like God definitely in the Old Testament was about justice. And like, he was just so quick to be like, you didn't do what I said. Done. You're done. Literally. Gone.
It's like what the in 1 Samuel about the ark. It's like when Eli just fell out of his chair and just died. Well, because your sons were sinning, you didn't do anything about it. You knew about it. So I'm going to kill them at the same exact time. And then you're going to find out about this and you're going to die. Like, literally. That's like, he was not playing.
Or then like you're reading through Job.
Oh my gosh.
And then I read through Job last year as everything was going on. And it was like, Job really said, I will have faith in God through everything. Literally take it all away. And I'll still have faith in God. You won't get me to curse God. That's crazy.
And he stood on business too. He
He
did.
did.
He did not.
His
do
friends were like, "You're wrong."
He's
His
like, "You
wife was
sinned."
like, "You're wrong. You obviously did something wrong for God to do this to you." And he was like, "I didn't. I'm not going to, and I will not curse God."
that. I'm like, I'm locked in. You know, you don't have to worry about me.
He is locked
Like,
in.
he was locked in.
Job was locked
He was locked
in.
in. And like, no matter what his friends are saying, you sinned. So this is the reason why it happened to you. Nah, man. Nah, you don't know what you're talking about. Whatever.
No idea.
How dare you? How dare you say this into my ear? It's like, yeah, he was locked in. And then God just gave him double what he had. Gave him more than what he had. I'm like, all right.
Because God exceeds exceedingly and abundantly.
Definitely. Absolutely agreed. Well, I don't know what time we're on here, but
I have no idea.
that happens all the time where we're like, at first I'm like, all right, let's try an hour at least. And then we start talking, the spirit starts moving, and I'm like, man,
Well,
I could do this all day.
It's like you texted me. You were like, "Here's what we're gonna ask," and then you said it. You were like, "The spirit will move, and we're just gonna yap."
Yep, that's literally what happens
And we
every
just
single
yapped.
time. God delivers. That's what
I don't know
happens.
the order of what anything was said. Have fun editing.
Oh, it'd be fine. It's just cutting through, and I'm like, all right, yep, this happened. Like, I don't usually cut out anything unless like I just had a coughing attack or something. I'm like, all right, this guy, this has to
got
come out.
go.
This has to get out of here. But no, I'm very, very thankful that you're able to make it on. You
I'm
know,
glad. Thank you for having me.
of course, if you want to come on some more, you're more than definitely, because we just come on here and yap. You know, we can get like a little small group on here, just
yap.
talk about God and be like, yo, God cooked this week. Check this out.
Oh my gosh, we'll have to like get like Marcus, and Olivia. And
Oh my
it'll
God,
be a good time.
that'd be nice. Marcus is. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but you know, Marcus is talking about being back on soon. So
Oh
yeah. I shared a note with him, so I'm like, hey, let's come up with some questions.
I told them last week. When did we have Bible study? 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
I was like, yeah. I was like, he asked, I'm gonna do it. And Olivia was like, he already asked. Didn't you guys just meet? And I was like, yeah, in like September. Like,
Yeah.
we'll do the thing. Let's do it.
Marcus-
Let's step out in boldness.
Yeah,
Like,
Marcus is so busy though, so trying to get him on is like pretty tough. Because I mean, worship leader, this year is looking really good for him. So I'm like, he slammed, and I'm like, all right, bro, like, don't forget about me. Like, I want you on too. You know, like, let's get you back on. No, that'd be great having like 4 people on, just talking about God, and you never know what the spirit might bring up. You know,
it'll be a
like,
good time.
yeah, like there was a lot of stuff that was brought up today. Like, all right,
There's a lot of stuff today that I said that I was like, wow, that wasn't even on my mind.
I was like, I wasn't even thinking about that. I'm like, all right. And there were some things that you said. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna hold on to this till she gets done. And I'm gonna say this because it was itching. Like the pagan gods, like all that. I'm like, church hurt. I'm like, all right, I got a list. I was like,
Oh my gosh, yeah, crystals. But I really was. I was like, oh, I guess like these things are cute, but like, and I wore one. I had
Yeah.
a little necklace and I wore one like all the time. I had the
oh,
bracelet.
man, he was one of those. It was like, oh yeah, I got the crystals everywhere. You know,
But I just thought they were like,
you just thought they were cute. There
like in my innocence, I really just thought that I was like, oh, these things are cute. Like they mean cute little things. Little did I know.
little did you know you're being kind of an Israelite. It's okay.
I didn't know.
I was basically an Israelite too. Actually, I was an Israelite, like full on. So I mean,
See, there you go.
no better. I like to make fun of them, but sometimes we're in comparison of them. So oops, sorry. But yeah, thanks for having you on, and glad you guys are enjoying the content. You guys are crushing it. 105 subscribers. I don't know when this video is not coming out till
That's okay.
like the 21st.
That's fine.
Yeah. But I don't know where we'll be at then. But when I made this video, we're at 105 subscribers. So
Hopefully more than that by then.
right? I'm hoping so. But if you guys like the video, like, comment, subscribe, turn on the post notifications, because some of y'all be missing out on the videos and they kind of heat. Not gonna hold you. But yeah, hope you guys take care, and we'll be praying over you guys. So peace out.